Minister Padoan, thank you so much for speaking to Bloomberg. Today, Thursday, is the day that Article 50 will be triggered. What do you see as the next 2 years in terms of negotiations between the EU and Brexit?
Difficult negotiations. Let's not underestimate the different points of views and the fact that Europe will probably take not an easy stance vis-à-vis the negotiations. And also some time will have to be devoted to any transition measures which will be needed to allow for the new arrangement to work. There is otherwise a risk of disruptions of markets which cannot be underestimated.
Do you think Europe will speak with one voice?
Yes, it will. Of course, now there are different views across European countries, but eventually, as negotiations proceed under the leadership of the Commission and Michel Barnier, Europe will speak definitely with one voice.
How much do you think the UK needs to pay? We heard different figures from Jean-Claude Juncker. I don't know if it's been discussed at Euro level.
It's not been discussed at the ECOFIN level. I think this is not the real issue, how much will be paid. The fact that we come down to an agreement which is as peaceful and further forward-looking as possible. Of course, we will then have to ask ourselves what will be Europe after Brexit is completed. And this is the big question mark.
And what will it look like? Will it stay together? Will it be stronger? Or will it be significantly weakened?
Well, of course, this is a delicate political season for Europe. In many countries, there are key elections to be carried out. I continue to be hopeful that Europe will renovate itself deeply enough to answer the demands coming from European citizens, which call increasingly for disgregation rather than integration.
Which means what? Significant reform, cutting down bureaucracy in the Commission and the Parliament?
All those reforms that are needed to provide a future to our children in terms of job, security, opportunities, quality of life.
Which are what exactly? Is it more infrastructure spending? Is it coming together on key projects such as the banking union?
It's more education. It's more resources for a renewed and updated welfare system. It's more about growth and environment. And of course, finance and infrastructure are instrumental to these issues.
What do you see as the biggest risk to the eurozone today?
The risk is that the eurozone does not go back quickly to growth and job creation and is seen by citizens only as an instrument of finance and budgets and not about growth and prosperity, which should be the case.
But would that be enough to reconnect with the citizen and almost stave off this supposed wave of populism that we're seeing?
It will be not enough. It will be necessary if not sufficient. So we need to introduce in monetary union instruments that deal more with the social dimension. Italy has put forward a proposal about unemployment insurance mechanism, which would complement the existing instruments in the eurozone.
Minister, can you assure investors that the problem with the banks is now out of the way?
The problem with the banks is being solved in the sense that there are still some critical points, but now we find the solution within a European rule context and a full agreement with European institutions to address those problems which are the legacy of a very prolonged and deep recession in the economy.
So, Minister, what is the one thing that people worry about? Investors are asking a lot, I guess, testing euro and the Italian political system. How do you reassure them?
The Italian political system has produced better results than expected and recognized. The Renzi government has been in office for more than 1,000 days, which makes it the 6th longest serving government, in which reforms have been introduced and are beginning to bear fruits. So that's political stability, not instability. Of course, now we are looking forward to the next elections in more or less 12 months' time. And I'm confident that this strategy of reform, which has been the hallmark of the Renzi and the Gentiloni government, will continue.
Do you think the five-star movement has a chance of getting into power?
The five-star movement is nowadays leading the polls, but we'll see what happens at the elections.
How are you dealing with debt? This was one of the big promises that you did to Europe.
The five-star movement is facing the challenge of government and not just protest. And this is the big challenge that populist movements are facing all over Europe, to do things and not just to say no to things.
But, Minister, I hear a lot of investors asking on whether Italy is the weakest link within Europe.
I know they asked a question. My answer to them is this is not the case for a number of reasons. One of which that Italy has strong fundamentals. It is recovering from the recession. It's growing again. Reforms are paying off. And of course, there is a huge debt, but the debt has finally stabilized and will begin to go down as of next year. And in addition, so this is a major turnaround with respect to the previous 10 to 15 years in the country. And we are back to employment levels which were the pre-crisis levels. So we are back to normal and to a better future.
Do you believe Italians are behind the project of the euro, the single currency?
They continue to be behind the project, but they need to be convinced that euro and Europe are not just about money and finance, they're also about growth and jobs.
You're here in London to attract investment. Is that difficult? And will it continue being difficult until we have fresh elections in Italy?
Well, we know what companies are looking for. They're looking for a good business environment, lower taxes, slim bureaucracy, good skills, and a nice living standard for their employees. These are all things that are needed and are possible, and cities and the national government are working together to provide them to investors, but also people that want to come to work in Italy.
But would anyone actually rival London in terms of success?
London is unique, is a wonderful city. I always love to come back to London. And from the point of view of financial industry, is also unique because it combines all the segments of the industry. I don't think that there is any other London in Europe in the foreseeable future, which means that there are more opportunities for major cities in Europe to do at least part of the financial industry business of what I would like to see as a network of cities rather than as a attrition between cities.
But what is the Italian proposal, given, again, these concerns about politics, that we don't really know what comes next?
Well, I'd like to invite people to look, yes, at politics, which are always very colorful in the country, like in other countries, but also look at things that governments do in practice. And we have done a lot of things in terms of structural reforms, tax benefits for companies and investment, tax benefits for people that decide to come back to work and study in Italy. So please, my appeal to companies and to business communities, look at what has been done and not just what you think has been done.
You've also put some incentives, especially for the very wealthy that may want to bring money back and go back and live in Italy. How many people are you actually expecting to pick up on that proposal?
Well, it's difficult to put numbers, but certainly this is directed to a limited segment of people. We think that we are providing a tax environment which is very attractive compared to other countries in Europe.
Will it be much more easy to make the case for Italy if the elections in France go in a way where you have a stronger Franco-German axis to I guess, push forward for the European project?
Well, if there is stronger support at the political level for the European projects, of course, Italy, but not just Italy, will benefit. But again, it's not just about winning elections, it's about using the political mandate that hopefully we will get to change Europe for better and to go on with integration. This has been the success story of Europe for 60 years. We have just signed the Declaration of Rome, which is a very important result. 27 countries agreeing to sign on basic principles. Let's translate those principles into policy actions and facts.
Minister, what happens if Marine Le Pen wins in France? What happens to Italy?
Well, that would be generating negative contagion in the political mood. Not just in Italy maybe, but also in other countries. Let's not forget that the temptation to leave Europe is widely spread in a number of countries.
But would that hurt significantly yield, or the spread between Italian and German yield, and would that hurt significantly a lot of your financial institutions?
Well, markets are beginning to price aggressively political risk. And the victory of Marine Le Pen in France would be a permanent political risk to Europe. So I expect that to be reflected also in financial markets.